Hi, I'm ready to go live again. I'm hoping this time I'm not interrupted by the internet or whatever gremlins were out there last time, but I managed to do it in 3 installments. This time I'm going to do a live cooking demonstration, and I want to show you just how easy it is to make quesadillas. So we're going to make quesadillas, or I'm going to make quesadillas now, and you can watch the video back at another date. I've also posted the recipe further down on the Sustainable Bedford page. Quesadillas are a brilliant way of using up any leftovers that you've got in your fridge. So they're a really, really good recipe. Brilliant lunch, also really good for packed lunches. So I'm going to get started now and then I'll talk to you a bit while things are happening. So first thing I'm going to do is heat some oil. If I just tip this down so you can see my frying pans, I'm going to heat some oil in my frying pan. Now I tend to use rapeseed oil and I use cold pressed rapeseed oil. There's always lots and lots about which oils are best for you. I don't tend to cook with olive oil, number one because it's very expensive, and also it has a high burn rate. So it burns really easily, so it's much easier to burn your food, and it can apparently be carcinogenic. So I use olive oil. I use olive oil in dressings and I use it to drizzle over things, but I don't use it to cook with. I also don't use coconut oil, and I know this was really fashionable at one stage, but it's really high in saturated fats. So I think it's quite a healthy oil per se, but it's quite a high saturated fat. It's very difficult to get a clear message. You can read one thing and it says that this oil is better for you, and you read another one and this one is. But I do tend to go for cold pressed rapeseed oil, and it's the cold pressed which makes it okay. I know in America they don't have cold pressed; they have canola. Is it canola oil? I think, and that's apparently not good for you. That's very highly genetically modified, and it's produced in a way which isn't supposed to be very good for you. As far as I'm concerned, this one is the best one, and I buy this one from Ocado, which is a nice little one. So I'm going to heat some oil in the pan, and then on my chopping board, if I just tilt this down, you can see, just move that out of the way a bit, and move that. You can see I've chopped up some bits and pieces. So this recipe, the recipe I've posted, only calls for spring onions. But I decided, because I've been saying to put anything in, throw it all in, it'll be fine. I've gone through my fridge and found a few other bits and pieces that I want to use up. So I've also chopped up some red pepper, chopped it up nice and small. So I've got red pepper, I've got some cherry tomatoes, and I've got the spring onion. So I've chopped it all up, and now my oil is heated. I'm going to add it to my pan. So if I just pop this back up so you can see the pan. Unfortunately, my kitchen isn't really set up for doing cooking demonstrations. I currently, if you could see what I've done, I currently have my laptop balanced on top of my toaster on a couple of cookery books. So not quite the professional setup that you get if you watch Saturday Morning Kitchen, which is probably on now. So I'm just going to add these to the pan. Because I'm using spring onions, they don't take very long at all. So I'm just going to leave them to sizzle away. I'm a big fan of trying to add as much colour into my cooking, into my meals as possible. Strong believer, obviously, the more colours you get, the more nutrients you're getting. So this pan looks fantastic. It's got the red of the peppers and the tomatoes, and it's got the green and white of the spring onion. It'd also be lovely. You could also throw in a handful of sweet corn. If you threw in a handful of frozen sweet corn now, you then add some yellow. Also add a bit of sweetness, which is really good for kids. Leave that to cook. Quesadillas, fantastic for lunch. As I said, we ate a lot of these during lockdown when I was struggling for lunch ideas. I quite often cook quesadillas on a Sunday, and then my children take them to school cold for their packed lunches on a Monday. They're a really good alternative to sandwiches. Because if you put cheese in it and the cheese is melted, they also stick together nicely. So they're much easier for children to eat because less falls out of them. And you can put a lot more in them. I find I can cram a lot more goodness into a quesadilla than I can cram into a sandwich. My children are much more likely to eat things in this that they wouldn't eat in a sandwich. I'm just going to give this a stir because I don't want it to burn. And as I said, this really won't take long because don't forget it's going to be cooked again later. So I think that's nice. I still like a bit of bite in, and I don't want it to be overcooked. So literally a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to add some spices. And I've chosen to add paprika and cumin. But again, be creative. You can add whatever you want. I'm just going to grab my teaspoon, which is over here. I should have got it ready. Not very organised. I'm going to add half a teaspoon of each. So I've got half a teaspoon of paprika, and I will talk about my tins in a second. And I've got half a teaspoon of cumin. I'm going to pop those in, give it a stir, and leave it for a minute, just so that those spices can start to cook and they'll start to release that lovely aroma. Now, I tend to buy my herbs and spices in bulk. I think those little tubs you get in the supermarket, I think they're really overpriced, and I get through them really quickly. I tend to use the same spices. So if you look at all my recipes, I tend to use a lot of the same things. So I use a lot of cumin, coriander, garam masala, turmeric, paprika. And because I'm using the same ones a lot, I tend to buy the big bags. The ethnic supermarkets are really good for getting these. You can also get them online. There are some companies that specialise in this. And again, if you're thinking about reducing your packaging that you're getting in your shop, buying your herbs and spices in bulk and decanting them is a really good way. And I have these fantastic little tins, which I got I went on a cookery course with them, the Cooking Academy, and did an Indian cookery course. And they had these and I fell in love with them. So I came home and bought some. So these little metal tins, I've got 4 of them. They stack really nicely, so they take up less space in my cupboard. I've tried to theme them. So I've got one with my Indian spices in. I've got one which has got chilies and peppers and paprika in and salt. I've got one which has my herbs in, so my oregano, and they're fantastic. You can see I don't tip it out. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little tins in there, and I have put labels on them. Because although I cook a lot, I must admit, sometimes I don't think I would pass the MasterChef test where I have to work out the spices in something. I'm not quite good enough for that. So they cooked off nicely. My vegetables are looking lovely. I can smell that lovely cumin and paprika smell. So I'm now going to add my tinned beans. Now I'm using cannellini beans today because that's what I've got in my cupboard. But you can really add any beans you want. I often make this recipe with butter beans, which I think I put on the recipe. So it's quite sizzly now, I have to talk a bit louder. And you can put in any beans you want, and tinned beans are a fantastic way of upping they count as one of your 5 a day, so upping your fruit and veg intake. They're a really good way for bulking out meals. Super, super healthy, and they're cheap. I think this tin from Ocado was about 55p. And that's all we need in that. That's enough beans for the whole family. I make my own baked beans a lot now as well. I don't buy baked beans at all. I make my own using cannellini beans, tin tomatoes, and a few other ingredients. Big fan, always have beans. These are one of my store cupboard essentials. My store cupboard always has tin tomatoes, tinned beans, lentils. They are my things. Pesto's another one that I always have. They don't take long, just pop those in. And now today I've got smoked cheese because I really love the flavour of it. Just going to move that because I know that that's slightly in the way. Let me pop this over here, my utensils. I'm going to add some smoked cheese now. Now you can add any cheese you want. Again, if you've got some bits of cheese left over from another recipe, don't go out and just buy smoked cheese. If you've got other cheeses, use them first. So I'm going to throw in the smoked cheese and a couple of beans that escaped from my tin onto the worktop. So you can't see that part that I knocked something over. Give it a stir, and I'm just going to let that cheese melt in. I'm then going to add a couple of handfuls of spinach. Spinach, again, is one of my ingredients. I always have spinach. I add handfuls to everything. So a couple of big handfuls of spinach go in, and I'm just going to let that wilt. And that is your filling for your quesadillas done. That is it. I told you it was easy. Really simple lunch. So I'm going to turn that off and put that to one side because we'll need that in a minute when we come to fill them. So I'm just going to grab my tortillas, which I should have got out beforehand, but I didn't. So I was just checking that my internet was working, but it wasn't my internet that was messing up. Thank goodness. I'm going to heat another pan now. So I've got another pan. It's a non-stick pan, so I'm not going to put any oil in it. I'm going to heat it up, and then I'm going to make the quesadillas. I'm also going to put my oven on because after I've made them, I'm just going to pop them in the oven on a tray just to keep warm. Otherwise you'll find everyone will be eating at different times, and that's something I really don't like. I like us all eating together. So my pan's heating up. I'm going to do 2 at a time, so I'm going to put 1 in. I'm going to spoon some of my mixture into it, which is nice and gooey. Now the cheese, oh, I love cheese. I'm going to put a bit in just on one side of the quesadilla, so I don't know if I can hold it up. So I've just done it on one side, and then I'm just going to fold it over. Fold it and push it down. And it will just stick together because of the cheese. So I've done that one, then I'm going to put another quesadilla in the pan, or another tortilla, and I'm going to fill that one without dropping it everywhere in the same way. So a couple of spoonfuls of the mixture. It smells absolutely lovely. The smoked cheese, oh, it smells good. Goat's cheese would be a good one if you've used goat's cheese in a recipe in the week and you've got some left over, even cheddar. And again, I'm going to squish it down so it fills it. And I'm just going to leave that to fry on one side, and then I'm going to flip it over and fry it on the other side. And that's it. That's all it takes. Serving it for lunch today, I'm just going to serve it with a simple salad. So I'm just going to do a nice side salad. In the summer, we had a lot of coleslaw, and actually, if you look on the recipe I've posted on here that's off my website, I've included a coleslaw recipe. Coleslaw, another brilliant way for using up leftovers. I throw anything in. Cabbage, apple goes really well, fennel. You throw in any of those, root vegetables, throw them in, lovely coleslaw. I was watching something the other day and they made a coleslaw out of Brussels sprouts, which is something I'm going to try over Christmas. I think, get your raw Brussels sprouts. I've got a food processor that has a grating mechanism on it. Throw them in, grate them up, add either natural yogurt or you can add mayonnaise to it if you want to do it really simply, and make a nice coleslaw. Perfect side for these. I'm just going to flip it over, it should be brown. That's one side done. I'm going to flip this one over. Just going to move it over there. You can also serve it if you wanted to make more of a meal of it. You could make some homemade potato wedges. Sweet potato is what I like. The boys in my family don't eat sweet potato. They only like normal white potatoes. So I always do a mixture. Always leave the skin on. Very rarely peel potatoes unless I'm doing roast or mash. And I don't do mashed potatoes very often because they take too long. I tend to all leave the skin on because, number one, I don't like peeling potatoes. And number two, the skin has so much goodness in it. And again, you're reducing your food waste. Instead of peeling it and throwing it, leave it on. And my kids, it's funny, they don't like eating the skin of a jacket potato, but they will eat the skin on potato wedges. So this is great. Potato wedges, make a nice garlic mayonnaise to go with it. So many options. Even have it with soup. If you've made a nice soup, like I said earlier, you get all your ends of vegetables, pop them in the slow cooker with some stock. And then you can have quesadillas served, instead of bread, served with the soup. Now, these are actually done now. That is all it takes. So make your filling, do your quesadillas. I will now put these ones in the oven, and then I'll make my next batch. So I'm not going to go through doing that because I'm going to be doing exactly the same again. So it is lunchtime, and this is actually what we're going to have for lunch today. So I'm going to carry on cooking them, and then my kids, my husband and I can enjoy our quesadillas with salad for lunch, which will keep us going, lots of good energy in there, because after this, we're going to take the dog out for a nice dog walk. So thanks again to everyone who's joined. I've really enjoyed this morning. It's been lovely to do something different on a Saturday morning. I don't know, I might be invited back to do something else another weekend. Maybe I could share another recipe. I could do another cooking demonstration. So watch this space and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for joining me.